Sanding wood signs. What does it mean? What are the variables? What do you need to do? What are the mistakes? Coming right up. So, hello, my name is Henry with Woodworking by LPI, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about sanding, specifically more or less the baseline with regard to sanding, because there are a lot of scenarios you can get into with regard to sanding. It seems to be a mystery to a point. I'm not really sure why. I've kind of learned by trial and error over the years, and I freely admit that. But sanding is a very, very vast subject. It all depends on the wood rather, that you're sanding. It also depends on the type of work that you're doing. Are you doing finish work? Are you just taking down edges or whatever? And we'll get into all that. So basically what I wanted to tell you is I'm going to show you in this video with regard to wood signs and basics. Okay, to get you started. Because the majority of my videos are related to beginners in wood sign business or tutorials, if you will. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to go over several things here. I have some tools here I'm going to go over. I have some sandpaper I'm going to go over. And I'm going to try not to make this a lengthy video, but I feel it's important that you know about sanding, because if you're doing wood signs, you're going to do a little bit of finishing work. Okay, it's not in-depth finishing work. Depending upon the type of sign that you're making, the majority of my signs are stained with an early American stain, and it doesn't really require that fine grit, you know, to sand down and get it really like uber smooth. Majority of the time, the 60 or 80 grit does really well for me. Okay, so what is sandpaper? Well, let's look at sandpaper. Okay, so majority of the sandpaper that I buy, and I'm not sponsored, by the way, on this, is from Diablo. And the reason I like the Diablo brand is because Diablo really lasts a long time. It does a very good job, and I use generic ones also, truthfully from a cost perspective, but they don't work as well as a Diablo. And again, I'm not sponsored by Diablo by no means. I'm just mentioning it because I like it. So so basically sandpaper works from this perspective. The higher the number, the smaller the grit, the finer the work. So if you're going up to, say, 200, 220, that's a real fine grit. It's for real fine finish work. The lower the grit, the more aggressive the sandpaper is. Okay? And you can get all kind of, I'll show that to you a little closer. You can get all kind of sandpaper. This here is specifically for the square vibrating sand right here. I call it vibrating. But like I said, we'll get into that in a little bit. So it gets into all kind of grit, and I typically use the 60 or 80. Okay, so hopefully that explains the numbering system with regard. So the higher the number, the finer the finish work. The lower the number, the more rough the wood's going to be. Okay, so let's go over the tools. Okay, and I have an example here for you. So the tools I primarily use is the orbital sander. I use an orbital sander, and the reason I really like the orbital sander is because it allows me a lot of flexibility in doing things from extremely rough wood to smooth wood. And it all depends on, you know, the grit that I put on here. Okay. And I use, like I said, typically the Diablo brand, 80 grit. Okay, and it's put on with Velcro, which makes it really, really nice. And then I have, you know, the catch back here, which comes off, and it catches all the sawdust. This goes in a circular motion as well as a vibration that comes off of it. So it goes in a small motion as well as a twisting motion, which really gives you a lot of advantage to when you're sanding the wood. Okay, this one here basically vibrates, and this is really good for getting into corners, of course, because of the square edge as opposed to round. Okay, so I don't use this one a lot, but it's really good if you're getting into corners or you have more fine work that you're wanting to do. I find this works really well. And you can put these on two different ways. You can use the catch on it and fold it underneath, or you can stick it on as I've done here. So you have sanding blocks, and I'm just going through the different options here as to what they have. These sanding blocks are flexible, okay, and the flexibility on these allows you to get on things like the edges, okay, the edges, or down into, if you push down on it, it gets you down into those little grits and it's nooks. I tell you folks, I can't talk. Nooks and crannies. Get the mouth working today. Need more coffee. And it really helps out. And these all come in different grits. Typically they come in heavy, medium, and fine. So I typically use a medium grit. I believe that they still offer specific grits in numbers on these, but I haven't seen them lately. So, but I use a medium, and that works really well. So it gives you something to hold on to, which is important, and allows you to get into nooks and crannies. So that's what I like about that. Okay, so, and then you have the roll-up ones here, or the hand-free ones, which you can buy at any Lowe's or Home Depot. And then I use this for the real intricate, areas that I need to get into if I need to fold it up and get into the real small spots and such. And what's nice about this is that, it just gives you a lot of flexibility as you go across. Okay, so we have the tools, we have the hand block for the pad block, and then we have the one that I use by hand. Okay, so we've kind of discussed the levels of the grit on the sandpaper, and we've discussed some various things that I use. Now, this is not an all-encompassing video on sanding sandpaper and such, and I think I've already mentioned that, but I want to make that point. This is not an all-encompassing. I'm only telling you some basic information from a beginner perspective, not tool, but beginner perspective, to understand the different types and varieties that you can do. Okay, so these are the things that you can use. Now, let's look at some of the downsides to sanding. There are techniques that you can use with regard to sanding. I've seen many different techniques that can be used. And I admit I've used some of those bad techniques as well. You really should concentrate flat, okay, when you're applying the sander, flat to the surface like that, not like that. Okay. Now there are times that may require you to do that, but just understand when you're doing it on a soft wood such as pine, which is most of my signs are made of pine, when you do this, you're creating a valley. And that's not good, because you want your surface of your wood to be flat, not like this. And a lot of folks do that, okay? As well as it's a waste of sandpaper, which is a waste of money, which is not a good thing. So let me show you an example of what you shouldn't do. That's when I took off my orbital sander, and you see it's all around the edges. And you're wasting the inside part. And I can't use this anymore on the wood because it's not effective, and if I do, I'm only getting one small spot, and now I'm carving a line in the wood, which is not a good thing either. Okay, so that's what I meant by when you do the sander at an edge, this is what it's going to show on the paper. Okay, so this is not good. Okay, more of the way you really should be doing it is where your sandpaper comes out like that, where it's more even across the sandpaper. And you get full use of your sandpaper, because after a while these things get really expensive, and we all trying to save money, right? So keep that in mind. So go flat against your board. As well as you want to go slow across the wood, not slow enough that you're going to dig, but slow enough that you're going to create a smooth surface. Okay, there is a measurement of that, believe it or not, and I don't have it right now, believe it or not, off the top of my head. But you want to go slow across it, okay? So as you go across the board, you want to take your time and go slow. And make sure you use the full layer of the sandpaper to get the full effect of it. Now, there's a downside to some of this as well with regard to pressing too far in one end and the other side, this way or this way. It leaves swirls in the board, or little circles, And the orbital sander is really good at that, especially if you put stain on after the fact. You're going to see these little swirls and circles like this. And that comes through the stain and it makes a bad looking product, and you really don't want to do that. I have done it and tried my darndest to avoid it. It takes a little practice. You just got to be patient. That's really what it comes down to. And a lot of woodworking is patience, unfortunately. And some of us don't have patience, depending upon the day. So, all right. So, I'm going to put this one away, and I'm going to use this right here. And look at this. I said I always use the Diablo. This is a 50 pack. You can get them in a 100 pack as well. I get these off of Amazon and at Home Depot, one of the two. And you get them better when you buy them in a bulk like that. They're cheaper per sandpaper. Okay, and these adhere to the bottom of this. Okay, so very good deal. All right, so I got a little example just set up for you. And I painted a corner and I left part of it with a sand sealer on it. Okay, so I'm going to go over this and I'm going to sand it, and I'm going to show you some of this and the way you should be doing it, like that. Okay, like I said, I'm trying to make a little quick video today for y'all. Okay, so watch your cord, and I need to put my protection on, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I think you can hear me through this, so I'm going to try and continue to talk through this. So let's look at what I got here. Okay, this is part sand sealed, and this part is the paint. And black paint, the primer that I use typically, this right here, is typically what I use. I use primer specifically because the paint version of this, paint primer version of that, it takes forever to dry. And it's so thick, so I don't recommend the paint primer version. I definitely recommend just a primer by itself. Okay, so I painted it with that, just flat primer on this section right here, so you can see the marks that I'm talking about and the best way to sand. Okay, so let me put this back over here. Okay, you can hopefully see me. Ah! Okay, so got the board. Gonna take that, got our protection on. Okay, and I need to plug it in. Okay, I got that, and I got this. Okay, so let's do a pass over it and see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm just gonna blow this off here. Now you notice, like I said, it was flat. Okay, so you can see this is the sanding sealer here, and how it took off the paste, and it did it in a nice straight line fashion here. And of course, you're going to need to go over that a couple times. All right. And like I said, don't dig. You don't want to dig real hard. So as you can see, you know, that straight line. So I'm going to go over with a simple pass again, and we'll see what it looks like. See the movement of that? You ever try to scratch your nose on one of these things? Yeah, that's an aggravation. Okay, so you see how straight and nice and smooth? I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to get that there. Okay, this is really what you're looking for. Okay, I can try and do it so it gouges it, so you can see what I'm talking about. Now from the top view, you really don't notice this. But I'd venture to guess that you're going to notice it from the side. Oh, what do you know? I don't know if you could see that, but there is a slight dip right there. Okay, so, and if you run your hand over it, you can definitely feel the dip. So it's not meant to do that. I mean, of course, you're trying to get, whatever material off, and smooth it out and such. And if you're going to do that, okay, but make sure you go back and smooth it off, okay? Or if it's drastic enough, go ahead and, I don't know why I'm talking with this, with this thing on. Excuse me. If it's drastic enough, you can run it through a planer or or through a drum sander. I have a drum sander over here I could run it through. But all different woods of different types, require different types of sanding. I'm basically just showing you the basics here. Okay, so this kind of summarized up here just a little bit. Okay, you have different types of sandpaper and sanding techniques. Okay, along with the hand, the block, the orbital. Okay, and you have the square that goes on the other sander, which I showed you here just a brief second ago. Okay, this one here, and stuff falling out. And then you have, as I recommended the Diablo. I prefer the Diablo brand on several things. I think I've mentioned it in another video with regard to the saw blade as well as router bits. Diablo is an excellent brand, and I'm not endorsed. So this is not a sponsored video by Diablo, not whatsoever. So hopefully, I know this is really quick and fast, down and dirty, but hopefully it helped you kind of take an eyeball at what different types of options are available to you. And my recommendation is the orbital sander with different grits. Your 60 and your 80. These two here, primarily this one for your wood signs. Okay, and it should do a very sufficient job unless you have something specific that you're really doing some finishing work on. A lot of your woodworkers are going to tell you to go down to 120, 150, 180, maybe even 220. And that's fine, and it works if that's what the piece, the wood piece requires. The majority of the jobs that I do for the wood signs really don't require it. It just requires those two, the 60 and the 80. Don't forget, if you get a chance and this was helpful for you, to click that that thumbs up for a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And we'll be talking about CNCs next. So we'll see you in the next video.